Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. We have falling water temperatures. September is here. Nights are cooling off. I don't really care if you're down south or you're up north. You're going to see falling air temps that are going to lead to falling water temps throughout the month. And one of the best baits for locating fish that are in the move, that are changing locations based on those dropping water temperatures, really starting to get into that fall migration, is your lipless crankbait. So today I want to talk to you about some of my favorite tips for the lipless crankbait. It's one of those baits that just tends to get bit. You can cast and retrieve it just straight back to the boat, but there's a lot of little things that you can do that will help you not just generate more bites, but make the bait more effective, make it more efficient, allow you to cover a lot more water. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how often your bait tends to get slapped. When this bait, let me grab it for you. When your lipless is coming through the water column, it tends to draw a lot of attention and get a lot of fish to slap at the bait. And because of that, you tend to miss a lot of fish. And one of my favorite tips when they are slapping at the bait, if you're fishing in relatively shallow water, so I'm going to say in 5 foot of water or less, is to choose the correct follow-up bait. Now, a lot of you would say, well, just throw a wacky rig behind where you think you got that bite. That will work at times, but my best follow-up bait, my absolute best follow-up bait for a lipless crankbait is a walking topwater bait. I think a big portion of this is these tend to get such aggressive bites that the fish come up and slap at it and they move quick after that. It's not like they come up and hit the bait and then sit there. They come up, slap at it, and they slide off 15, 20 feet away. A walking topwater bait is a loud enough bait that it's going to draw that fish back. And a lot of times when a fish comes up and slaps at it, what they're actually trying to do is injure that bait fish. So if you got a walking topwater bait coming across the surface, it's doing a very good job at mimicking that injured bait fish. So for me, I tend to throw as a follow-up bait a walking topwater bait, which I know a lot of people probably think goes against the norm, and it does kind of go against the norm. But I love the fact that I can cover more water. I don't know where that fish went after they slapped at the bait. They could have gone left, right, towards the boat, away from the boat, and a walking topwater bait generally tends to allow me to cover that area quicker and still have that noise to draw the fish back to it. So for me, if I miss a fish, if I know I had a fish come up and slap a lipless crankbait, I'm going to make generally 3 casts. I'm going to make the first cast right in line with where my previous cast was that got the bite, and then the next one will be to the right or to the left by about 15 feet. And I'm really just trying to locate that active fish and get them to come back to that topwater bait. It's a great little tip that's been very, very successful for me over the years. So do not just necessarily throw that bait back in there or throw a wacky rig after them. I think you'll find that a walking topwater bait could be one of the best ones to go with. Today's video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app, which will help you select the best fishing places in the lake with features like the lake level, the current flow, the top baits tool, which will help you select the best baits for certain locations throughout the lake. Whether that's a clear water, stained water, dirty water, it'll choose the best bait for that location, provide you with all the information like what structure, what retrieve, different reel, all of the information that you need to catch the fish. This is in the app. The cool part about this app, though, is it's not just based on areas. It does provide you with specific tournament winning data that has been collected to help you figure out your best choices for baits and locations for whatever region of the lake it is that you want to fish. On top of that, not only does the app provide you with best locations, it gives you water clarity as well. So maybe you're on a lake like Lake Eufaula, where there is a bunch of different water clarity located throughout the entire lake. This will help you identify the clearest portions as well as the dirtiest portions of the lake. Plus, the Deep Dive app has now added the wind effect map, which is going to take all of the different wind conditions for the past couple of days and show you what banks on the lake are being hit the hardest. They also have inflow points that show you different places throughout the lake where your water is being flushed into the lake through different ditches and creeks and rivers, providing you with high percentage places to fish and letting you know what parts of the lake are going to be the best areas after a rain. Check out the Deep Dive app to help you become a better angler. Now, another tip, and this is something that I think you hear other people talk about on a somewhat regular basis, is how good a silent lipless crankbait can be on your lakes that have really heavy lipless crankbait pressure. So, if you're going to a place like a Gunnersville or a Rayburn, where a lot of people are throwing your lipless crankbaits, and you have all these really noisy baits coming through the water column, I do think switching to a silent version can be very, very good. But here's one tip to go even a little bit further. Uh, a lot of times, even if you choose a bait that doesn't have weights in it, your bait's not going to be truly silent because these things are moving back and forth. Your hooks are hitting against the bait. Your split ring is moving around quite a bit, and that's generating a lot of sound. If you really want to make it even more silent, tie the soft split rings. I've talked about it on the channel multiple times in the past, but you replace your metal split rings with a braided split ring. So you actually tie a split ring out of the braid, and that's going to be one more thing that just quiets the bait down. So if you're really trying to generate more bites from fish that are really heavily pressured and you think a silent bait is going to help you, tie the soft split ring. That's definitely another thing that I really like to do. Now, here's another tip. Uh, there's a lot of different versions of lipless crankbaits today. For me, one of the things that I'm going to use or look at to decide what lipless to choose is the water color. So if I'm fishing a place that tends to be clear water, a lot of times I want a bait that falls faster. So I'm going to go with a lipless crankbait that's heavier and thinner. So this is a very thin profile. This is a Berkeley Jack. This bait is meant to fall fast. It's meant to be fished a little bit deeper. And from that standpoint, I really like a bait like this in my clear water applications. I want a bait that will get down to the bottom, and if I pull it up high and let it falls fast. In clear water, generally speaking, a faster fall will help trigger some of those inactive fish into biting. It creates that reaction strike. If I'm going with dirtier water, I tend to want a bait that's a little bit wider in profile because when that bait comes off the bottom and I let it fall on some semi slack line, the bait tends to fall much slower. Generally speaking, for me, that allows that bait to stay in the strike zone a little bit longer. It allows the fish to find that bait in a little bit dirtier water. So I'm going to choose my profile of my lipless crankbait based on the water clarity. And the depth that I want to fish. If you're fishing deeper, generally a thinner profile bait will allow you to maintain deeper levels than a wider profile lipless crankbait. Now, another tip that I like to talk about, if you're fishing really heavy cover or a lot really thick vegetation and you're having a hard time getting your bait to come through it clean, I like to cut this front hook off my front treble hook off. I'll actually replace that so I've only got two hooks just like that. And the whole key is you just let your bait hang, and then based on when it's hanging, you cut the front hook off. And the reason for that is if I cut this hook off, when I'm retrieving it, the rest of that hook will lay flush and flat with the bait, and you tend to catch up the grass and your wood tends to be on that front hook. You can really reduce the amount of snags and allow your bait to come through much cleaner. I know a lot of people out there are going to say, well, you're going to miss a lot more fish. I really haven't experienced that problem. And there's a lot of people out there that really have utilized this tip very, very well over the years. So if you're having success with that and you're not finding that you're losing a lot of fish because you cut off one treble hook, put in the comment section because a lot of times people hear me say it. And when I've talked about this tip on the channel before, people question that one. And I really haven't had an issue with it. And it's something that I think that you can do that will actually generate more bites if you're fishing heavier cover because you can now fish your bait clean through a lot of that, which is going to allow you to get those bites versus getting snagged. So that's another tip. And then the last one is going to be a simple retrieve, but this is something that I've experienced so many times with such great success, but very few people do it. And that's to drag your lipless on the bottom. Fish it like the same way you'd fish a football jig. If you have a nice clean bottom and you can retrieve this over, the gravel or the rock, I just have really good success with it. And a lot of my bites will actually come when I stop the sweep and it's sitting there, just laying on the bottom, just like a jig would be. That's something most people don't do. Most people generally retrieve a lipless higher up in the water column, but I love to fish it like a jig. I'll throw it out, let it fall to the bottom, and I just slow pull it. I'll pull it so I still feel it vibrating, but it's maintaining bottom contact. Really good way to generate bites from fish that are inactive as well as fish that are in a colder water situation. So as your water temps start to fall and they become a little bit more lethargic and they're not willing to chase, you got to put it in their wheelhouse. So you put it right where they're sitting, which is on the bottom, and a lot of times. And I found that to be very, very productive. So those are some of my favorite tips when it comes to fishing lipless crankbaits. If you have a few other tips that you'd like to share with the other viewers, put it in the comment section so they can learn from you guys as well. Otherwise, don't forget about lipless crankbaits coming this fall. Falling water temperatures, you have a lot of fish in transition. Lipless crankbaits, great bait to throw when you're doing that.